Loading program, Trekommendations.
Hello and welcome to Trekommendations, a Star Trek podcast that invites on a guest for a fun chat and to share something within the Star Trek world that they think might be of interest to you. This week we have another member of the Starship Tempest crew, where he plays Lieutenant Nick Holden, as well as lending his voice to a few other members of the crew. He also ran people through a few Kobayashi Maru scenarios during one of their off seasons. It is, of course, Travis Sauder.
Hello, hello. So
I don't think I said your name right as well.
In fairness, it's either way, Sauder or Sauder. It works either way.
Well, whichever one he said, we'll clip that. That's the one. Yes, you lend your voice and your grunts.
Yes, my voice and my grunts to Panther. Yes, because I am terrible with accents. Anybody who's more caught up knows, because I tried to do a New Jersey one and it was atrocious. Yeah. So
I saw. This is not Star Trek related, but I saw a game for sale in a shop. We were like in a charity shop where you kind of buy like secondhand stuff, and they had a game, and it was a game called Accents. And I just looked at the back, and it's like it gives you I'm guessing it's giving you like a famous kind of quote, and then you have to say the quote, and then it also assigns you an accent, and you have to try and say it in that accent. Now, I didn't open it up and look through the cards, but I imagine that game could get pretty
terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a bunch of people who are actually good at accents or enjoy doing it, like, I bet that is an absolute blast. I would never, ever, ever play that game.
So. Yeah. I just wondered if there were some controversial accents included in the box.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can do that one.
So here's my thing. I think I've mentioned this before on one of the Tempest podcasts or whatever, but like, so I am bad at doing accents, very bad at them. I can't, if you tell me to do X accent, I can't, like I have trouble pronunciation with English a lot of the time. However, if I'm around someone that has that accent all the time, you know how you just sort of like start to pick it up just naturally, right? I do that very quickly. And so like if I'm around someone who is in those accents, like I started watching Justified, which is a TV show that takes place in like West Virginia. And sure enough, like rocketing through that episode, I started noticing like a little bit of a Southern drawl popping out in my voice. And I was like, oh, I need to stop that. Which normally is like, whatever, except in college I was in senior design with a Jamaican, and so we spent senior design like working on a project for hours and hours on end. And like one time I just was talking to someone else and just noticed like a little bit of Jamaican coming out of my mouth, and I was like, oh, I need to not do that because that's weird. So
yeah. I used to work with a guy, so I lived in Italy for many years, and I worked in a hotel, and my workmate, he was Italian, but he had lived in Jamaica for a long time. And so when we would speak English together, he spoke English with it's very strange to see an Italian speaking English like a Jamaican, but
yeah,
you know, that's the fun of accents.
It's true.
Who needs a universal translator? You know, that's what we would be missing out on.
We're getting there.
We are getting there. Yeah. Yeah. Dangerously close to some of the technology now. Now, before we move into the calibration questions, I just once again will beg people listening to, you know, review the show, like it, comment, do any of the things you can do to hack the algorithm, so we can boost the show up. Especially as I discovered that if you actually put in Google, you know, Trekommendations, Spotify or YouTube or whatever, it will autocorrect to recommendations for Spotify, which was kind of the pun. It was the play on words, so they got it. But I forgot that, you know, AI doesn't have a sense of humor, which is a problem. And I should have known. I should have looked at data and been like, of course, he doesn't get the joke. Okay, let's move into our calibration questions.
Calibrating.
So this is just to help the audience get a little bit of a taste for you, Travis, in case they haven't been following the Starship Tempest crew for many years. I always ask now, first of all, what is your favorite Star Trek show?
All right, favorite one has to be TNG. It feels like a default answer, I know. It was the one that I grew up with, like, you know, age range hits in that spot. Also, it's one of my top 3 shows all time. It's the whole there's an optimist in me. All of the technology, we joke about the technology being scary close to things, and it's also terrible in a lot of ways. But the part of me that loves Star Trek loves the fact that this stuff could be utilized in a way that helps everyone. So that TNG is the one that just like this hopeful, optimistic future rings true to me. The one that I probably enjoy the most is Lower Decks. but I can never
Okay.
put that one as my favorite because Lower Decks, it feels like you get so much more out of it. It becomes my favorite and the one I enjoy most because I've seen all of the rest, and
Yeah.
like that puts it in a weird different category in my brain. So
Yeah. It can't stand on its own, basically.
right, yeah,
Or it can
it can.
stand
I
on
think
its
it can.
own.
It's
You can go and
entertaining.
watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's
But
a good little half-hour comedy show,
yeah.
and like in the Star Trek universe, which is fun. But if you've seen every other Star Trek show, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
So I guess it's the idea of like it can stand on its own as a show and be good,
mhm,
but if it's put together with all the other shows, it
right,
elevates it to a better show. So that I guess is why you can't say
yeah,
it's my favorite, because if I remove the others,
it has a prerequisite.
it
So
drops. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
so but
interesting.
TNG is the one for me. So
Yes, I do think that I was having this conversation with my wife the other day about like AI, and just saying I think one of the biggest problems with AI is that it's called AI
yeah,
because it's not.
it's not.
It's
Yeah,
not
it's not
artificial
artificial.
intelligence. And I think if we
It is
approached it in a different way, as just a you know
the world's most sophisticated autocorrect.
yeah, or just I'm thinking like because you're saying about Star Trek having the technology but presenting it in a positive way.
Mhm.
It's like when they're just like, computer, find me all the information on X, and it just assimilates all of that for them, and they're like, okay, now order it in this way, or give me, look for instances of this. Like,
Yeah.
because I was thinking about, um, this is so off topic, but I was just thinking about how
See, I
it,
derail I derail our game on Star Trek Tempest, and I do
yeah,
the same on anything I appear on.
yeah, but
So
you're not taking all of my momentum, so it's fine.
it's true. Yep.
I just think it's funny that we hit like a level of technology we accept and then we don't want to go beyond that. So I'm like at schools where they're kind of now being like, oh, we're having to catch people that are using AI to, write their reports and things like that.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, when you're doing maths, you can use a calculator, and we're happy with like that level of technology, but
Yep.
then we don't want it to go beyond. But actually, once they leave school and they get into the workplace, and technology has
Mhm.
even moved on further than it is now, companies are probably going to be leaning into it even more. And
Oh
if,
yeah.
if they're doing a report and someone's like knows, well, I know if I give it this kind of prompt and I get this data, and then I can sift through that manually to fact check certain things, and and then I can present you this fully complete fact checked product here, and it took
Yeah.
me 20 minutes. Or I can go out and find all the information myself and do it all, and it's taking me
3 days.
2 days. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, well, the company wants that one, so it's almost like they should be teaching them how to use it
Yep.
versus just like
And they're
demonizing
starting to
it and
make that
saying we can't do
transition.
that. Yeah.
So yeah,
But
it's also the whole like shunting your critical thinking to someone else type of thing. Like that's one of the pushbacks I've seen is like
yes.
if you're just like I don't want to think about it, so I'm just going to have it tell me and assume that it's true is where it starts becoming a problem.
And I
So
think that's my point, right? That's
yeah,
where the teaching comes in of like,
teach them how to
you
not do
could,
that.
yeah, here's a tool, ask it these questions, now you get this information back. Does that sound right to you? Like, how do
Yeah.
you read through something and go, it doesn't sound right? What do you mean? Well, this, I was trying to find information on someone the other day, and I was like, oh, I can't be bothered to go through all their stuff. And I just put it into AI. Like, can you just find all the information about this person and this content that they're creating? And
Give me links. Yeah.
and 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 it was wrong. And I was like, well, I can tell that you've made
You
mistakes
made some
here.
stuff up
And,
here.
and
Yeah.
then I can, it's like, oh, they don't have a YouTube presence. I was like, well, that's funny because I know mainly their thing is YouTube, and all
That's
the
how
other
I found
stuff
out
is
about them.
yeah. So yeah, and I think the suggestion, they didn't know the last name, and the suggestion was it might be cool. And I was like, it's definitely not cool.
That's fun.
Yeah. Anyway, very good. Yes, TNG, great answer.
Yes.
Always a good answer. Love how we got there. Okay. Um, we've talked about Starship Tempest. If anybody doesn't know, it's using Star Trek Adventures. So it's a what is it? Tabletop TTRPG, tabletop
Yeah.
role playing game. Although you're playing
Yep.
through Roll20 or something, I guess. Um,
Yep.
but my question for you then is this: if you could invite a character from Star Trek, so I'm going to say not an actor, but just the character themselves,
Mhm.
to join you in, it doesn't have to be Star Trek Adventures, it could be any role playing game. Who do you
Right.
think would make a great addition to your team?
Um. So that So the difference is, do I want to just stick with the joke that we make on the show? So like, as you know, on the show, all of our secondary characters are animals as a gag that we just would not give up. So like, part of me wants to default to one of the, like, a Catian from somewhere.
Yes.
But I think in terms of like what feels right for our crew and our, like, what our adventure is, like, I have to go with Mariner,
Right.
from Lower Decks, because she is super competent, which is something that we try to like embody of the whole competency porn of Star Trek. But also she's utterly wacky and just adventure seeking, and I think that fits with us. So I think Mariner would be the most fun to have on board that wouldn't just mess us all up. So
Yeah. And she can do voices as well, so she,
she sure can.
she'd fit right in with
Yep.
with your team. Yeah. I mean,
Open invitation to Tanya Newsom too, because
yeah,
she's amazing.
She probably listens to this. I mean, she's a big Trekkie. I'm sure she wouldn't surprise me if she knows about you like that.
That seems weird.
Yeah, that would. So I always think there's like few degrees of separation in all of these things, though. Particularly,
I did dance with her at her birthday party on the cruise, though, so that was the
there
thing.
you go. And then you just slip a little like invitation to the show into her pocket.
Business card.
So, well, what's this? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know you're using Starship Tempest, so that's fine. It's you're skirting copyright as best you can.
Oh,
I do
yeah.
wonder
I
if you
mean,
bring on some of the big names, then you start getting a little bit more under the microscope. Like,
I think it's because we don't make real money. I think
yes.
that's the thing that lets us off. Because, like, I mean, Starship Tempest is separated, but like, I mean, it's all there's no as Brian, our GM, likes to say, there's no filing off of the serial number of Star Trek for our actual show. He rewrites everything into a book, into books for Starship Tempest, which takes place in a completely separate universe with totally different races and ships, and changes some of the story to sort of match his envision. Like, he's a little more hard sci-fi as a person. So his books of Starship Tempest are a little different, which those are completely IP free. But our show is definitely, like, if Paramount decided they wanted to squash us, they probably could, but
not his books. In
Yeah.
which case, I feel it would be you guys that would all be going, well, technically that was my joke, that was my idea, I made this suggestion, so you're really stealing my property now. Yeah, okay, interesting. I wait for the usurpation to take place, and you'll take him down.
See, now you're confuting me with Holden as opposed to me as a person, because Holden would do that. I would not.
No, you're all friends. I know you're all friends.
Yes.
That's fine. Okay, final calibration question for you is,
Alrighty.
currently there is talk of, a new Star Trek movie potentially. So at the moment, shows are disappearing very soon. But the idea is maybe there will be a movie. What would be your pitch for a new Star Trek movie to kind of reinvigorate the fan base, or bring in new people, appease old people, make a good show going forward?
So this is a tough question for me, in part because on a fundamental level, I feel like Star Trek is TV, not film. There are really great movies. I don't think the movies would be as good if they didn't have the framework from the films to help sort of build what they need to build from it. And that stems a lot from the fact that, like, in my view, we were talking about this before we started recording, was that I would love to see a Star Trek that starts from scratch. It doesn't necessarily have to reboot the entire universe, though I wouldn't even hate that. Like, they could literally just say everything that has existed in Star Trek now is a separate universe. We are never touching that again. It exists in its own little bubble. And now we're starting brand new, and these are new characters and new ships. They could either do that in the same universe or a totally different one. And I think if you were going to take that sort of clean slate route, a television show allows you to rebuild Star Trek in a way that I think is necessary for the type of story Star Trek tells.
Well, let's go with that then. Let's pivot. We're splintering off now into another Mirrorverse. What would be the TV show that you would like to see then?
The TV show, I think, man, that's still tough because of modern audiences, right? For me personally, I would love to see another TNG, in the sense of, like, I love the episodic storytelling. I'm a big fan of high concept sci-fi, where it's like you come up with this kernel of an idea, of this really sort of like high-minded idea, and then it filters into the whole episode of show that you get. there's a level of like TNG I love, but also, you know, people will go through horrible traumatic stuff and be fine the next episode, which doesn't really hold true in the long run. But I think there's a balance to be struck there, and I would just like a Star Trek show that addresses different things every episode and has the chance to be like, this episode is about this theme, and this episode is about this theme, and this is the baseball episode, and this is the, you know, the Western episode for no reason. So like that sort of balance of high concept sci-fi with just some fun stuff um, is where I would want to be. In terms of like the story to tell, I mentioned I just want a new universe. Give me a whole new crew, a whole new ship, whether it's in the same universe that just doesn't really cross over a whole bunch, or it's a completely new, this is Star Trek from zero again. That's what I want. I want something that I can get invested on its own, because currently all of the newer ones specifically try to get you invested by referencing the previous stuff that everybody liked. And that works to some extent, but it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it becomes like a, well, why is that there when it shouldn't be? Or Easter eggs for the sake of Easter eggs type thing. But really, I just want something new. I want something that I don't have to think I have to know the history of Star Trek for. I also think that that's the best way to get new people involved, because I think there is the bell curve of people who love Star Trek is trending older. And so I think the way you got to get people in new is not to be like, here's a show that takes place with a bunch of characters from 30 years ago. Good God, 30 years ago. And you have to now know all of their stories, or you may want to go and like part of that is because they want them to have to go rewatch all of those for whatever reason. So give me something new, I think, is my goal.
So a few thoughts on that. One is I love that you got kind of sad about, you know, 30 years ago, when actually TNG came out like 39 years ago.
I was being polite. I will have you say.
Yeah. So yeah, we're closer to 40, which is
Yep.
funny because it's still you know,
until it hits the 4.0, it's going to be 30s.
Yeah, well, it's just funny because like I recently, I suppose it was when I started doing kind of more of this stuff and being a little bit more involved, speaking to a you know, a wider variety of Star Trek fan, and then you'd hear people talk about classic Star Trek versus like new Star Trek, and I was like, oh, classic Star Trek as in TOS,
The original series, yeah.
like that is classic Trek, right? And then
nope,
the modern style of Trek, which was TNG and Voyager and Deep Space Nine, oh no, that's classic Trek. And like I was like, what? Hold on.
I feel like the true break line for classic Trek is the lull between Enterprise and Discovery. That's where I tend to break the line of like classic Trek is anything before anything Enterprise or older at this point.
Yes, which is sad. And it does make you feel old. And
now we're going to be going through another lull, it seems like. So
yeah,
see what happens.
And it does happen. Actually, I was thinking about, you know, obviously when Academy was announced that, you know, wasn't going to get a third season, and the second season had already been recorded, and you know, the petition to try and get a third season, I'm thinking you should actually be petitioning to make sure they release the second season. Is my
that's my
yeah, because
that was my thing.
That it would not surprise me that gets shelved for tax reasons.
I have the same worry.
But the idea that they're going to like re-up and do everything because it's just not happening. But so people are upset about that. But I was kind of in my reflective state thinking, well, when you actually think about how much Kurtzman Trek there is, all the seasons of Discovery, all the seasons of Strange New Worlds, all, you know, the seasons of Academy, we've got Lower Decks, we've got Picard. There was a lot 31. Of oh really? What was that? Not heard of that one. There's like so much Star Trek that for me, the idea that someone else gets a chance is actually a good thing. And even if it had all been, you know, if it had all been my favorite Trek, I'd still think, and I feel this way with a lot of IPs, that I'm just like, okay, it's interesting what they're doing with it, but I'd love to see what someone else could do with it, because while these creators have control of this IP, whether that's, you know, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, no one else gets the chance.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, they've had it now for a long time. They've made a lot of Star Trek. Can we see what some fresh eyes would do with it? It's sort of
I think there's like a natural human inclination of when you've been doing something so long, like you get so into it and you've been there for so long that I feel like it becomes difficult to, quality is not the right term, but like your perspective changes on it, right? Like you no longer are in there. And so, yeah, I think after a certain amount of time, he's like handing off is probably the best choice, simply because like that's the only way to keep it fresh. You can't stay fresh forever if you're just people don't, right? You change, the stories you're telling are going to change, whether you're writing those stories in your 20s versus 30s versus 40s. And so if you've been doing Star Trek for 30 years, the types of stories you're telling are gonna feel different and be different. And so, yeah, I think it has been past time for someone new to take over. Not necessarily as a knock to Kurtzman, but more so just because like I generally think that like a decade, maybe 2, is probably like the absolute max you should get out of that stuff. Because even Roddenberry, like he had TOS, and then you had the TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager all kind of clumped together, but he phased out, right? Like he wasn't there for a lot of it. So
I have some other, I don't want to say hot takes. They're not hot takes.
Okay.
They're they're mild takes at best. But I also think, and you've said it as well, and we talk about like modern audiences and modern television and the way it's structured now. But everybody talks about that almost as a negative, right? It's like, oh, well, how they have to write modern TV now. And I'm just thinking, who's told us that that's how it has to be written? Like, why do they have to do that? Because it doesn't seem like the audience wants that. So why not just say, oh, we're going to go old school. We're going to write it like this. And I also think, particularly with something like Star Trek, and I would open it up to things like Star Wars and, again, your Marvels, your DC, things like that. They've been around for so long and they've been shown in like every country around the world. They are a global IP.
Yeah.
So saying, well, now television is done this way, I'm like, not really. American television is done that way.
Hollywood specifically is done that way.
So, and I watched like a Korean drama. It was like 25 episodes. They were hour-long episodes. And they had all these different characters, and you explored like even characters that I was like, oh, we're never going to learn more about that person. They ended up getting like a whole episode flushing out their backstory and stuff. And I was like, and I was, it was great. I really enjoyed it. And I was just like, oh, imagine if you could do that again with something like Star Trek and you could actually spend time in this universe. And I realize it's expensive to make that, but also talking isn't expensive.
Yeah, make
blowing up
them
ships
cheaper.
is expensive, but
yeah,
and I lean into
action sequences are expensive.
Second screen viewing. This is another thing they talk about, right? It's like, oh, we know people are on their phone, but if I'm on my phone and I hear the ship explode and then I look up, the explosion's happened, and I'm not going back. So I'll just be like, oh, the ship blew up. So all that money you spent on that special effect to blow up the ship, I didn't even see it. But I could be looking at my phone and listening to a conversation and then be like, whoa, did he just say what? Oh, I can't believe he just said that. And I look up. So I feel like all of the excuses I hear that get put out of like, oh, this is modern TV and we're doing it for this and that, actually maybe fall down a little bit. And you'd asked me off, before we started recording, we were talking about Star Trek in general, and we talked about Academy for a bit. Academy is the most American feeling Star Trek show I've ever seen.
Yep, I can absolutely see that.
Like with them getting the jackets when they all got on the
Letterman
Calica
jackets,
team. I'm like, that is one of the most stereotypical American things I've ever seen. Like, we don't have those in the UK. Nobody has like the team jackets if they're not at a school anyway. Like, or, maybe I don't know, maybe at Oxford and things like that. If they're in a certain thing, but I was just
it is
like,
a very
wow.
American thing.
And I realize it's in San Francisco. It's in America. Yeah, I get that.
I mean,
but all the aliens behave like Americans as well.
Right, like, exactly. It's all American, but also like by then it's a world government too. It's like it's supposed to be one people as opposed to the American. Well, I mean, there's a whole colonial topic about Star Trek in of itself, but that's a whole thing. I will note that like the TV as a second screen thing, I think that is totally something that is pervading within the writing of modern television, especially modern Hollywood television. I also think that it's a cop out for writers because it's like, if you're telling a good story, they'll put down the phone, right? Like there are a lot of really good shows and movies that come out now that like people may watch on a second screen, but they still enjoy it and they may rewatch it without the second screen at some point because it was good. And so I think that there's a little bit of a cop out. I want to jump back to the thing about you said the American television versus others.
Yeah.
I think there's an amazing example that exists that it's just great that it exists for us to compare. The Three Body Problem, the
Right.
novel,
Mhm.
and there is one TV show that was done by Netflix. I believe it's like a 10 or 12 episode show, and then there was a version done in China by Tencent
Mhm.
that was released on Amazon. And that is like 24, 25, might even be up to 30. It's somewhere in the mid to high 20s of episodes, and they're all hour-long episodes. And the 25 episode season of Three Body Problem from China doesn't even cover all of the stuff. Like it doesn't even get through as much of the story as the 10 to 12 episode on Netflix. So like it literally ends like by episode 8 or something, you're through everything that happens within 25 episodes. And so I ended up watching the Chinese one first because I wanted to have that experience. And then I watched the Netflix one and I was like, man, there's so much stuff that gets left on the cutting room table or doesn't get fully explored and gets glossed over, and they have to combine elements into things. And like that narrowing, really, if you want to see how that affects, I think a lot of people talk about the fact that modern TV shows from America, at least, only get 10 episodes and how that can change how the stories are told. I think if you really want to get a feeling of like how strong that feeling actually is, watch the Chinese version of Three Body Problem. I think it's called something slightly different, and then watch the Netflix version, and you can really be like, oh, that's what that feels like. So.
And I think if you're going like if they're going Star Trek, more episodes, episodic is nice, as you said, like
Right.
being able to dip in and dip out. And talking of like weird links, so there was a former guest I had on the show was on because I'd heard them on another podcast, which is Zach and Mish. They have basically now they run some themes, and one of the ones they had was Ferengi Rengi Rama, where they watched all the Ferengi episodes. Well, no, all the episodes of Deep Space Nine that had the Grand Nagus.
Okay.
He is a big Star Trek fan. She had never seen Star Trek, so this was her introduction to Star Trek. Was
only
this.
the Grand Nagus episodes. That's fun.
Yeah, and then Zach, I saw Tawny Newsom post that she's going on the most upsetting game show in the world, which is one of their product, like to show that he's involved in. So I was like, oh, that's interesting that there's these links there. But Mish, who had never seen Star Trek and didn't think she was going to like it, enjoyed it more than she thought, despite them being the Grand Nagus episodes that are not the best episodes of Deep Space Nine, which was kind of the joke and why they'd done it. But she loved like the episodic nature of being able to jump, especially the early episodes of just being like, oh, it's a complete story. There's a beginning, middle, end, and I get the whole thing. So I think
there's
does
not a
work.
cliffhanger at the end of every episode to make you watch the next one because of streaming.
And so coming in as a modern audience, even I think could enjoy a like nice complete story. And then I think if you want that long, as we do now, like this long, it almost feels like 10 episodes is too much. They always have to stick in some filler, and filler tastes really bad when there's a big dramatic story happening and then you get some filler and you're like, well, you're just delaying me getting to the conclusion. And I'm coming from the UK. We get 6 episodes for a TV show.
Yeah.
But something like that,
I mean, 6 is generous. There are a lot that are less than that.
Yes. Yeah, now they do something that maybe 3 episodes and they're like an hour and 10 minutes each or something like that. They do crazy kind of, but I think that could work. Do a Star Trek show that's one story, like we're going to follow this story. It's 4 episodes.
Yeah, we just call those miniseries here, and they're fine. Like, I love miniseries. Chernobyl is one of the best things put to audiovisual medium ever. It is phenomenal, and that's a miniseries. It's like 4 or 5 episodes. So,
yeah, let's just play with it. We can do different things.
Yeah.
We can do anything apart from Section 31, apparently. Everything else is fine. Okay, well, that's been fun. That's we need to get to the meat of why you're here, really.
Okay. The reason I'm on
this late in, but it's fine. I've noticed the calibration questions section gets longer and longer as I go, but it is the fun part where we get just to talk about Star Trek in general before we go niche and specific. So, red alert.
Oh, that's right. There's a timer. I forgot about that.
There is a timer, and there's a nice red alert sound effect you may have heard, provided by one Brian.
Brian Shealy. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the pod, but when they came on, as we were going through the episode, recording the episode, I was just like saying, I was thinking about including like a sound effect here. Maybe I'll make like a
Oh,
this
yeah, yeah.
sound, and then maybe I'll make it like a that sound. And that evening, I got sent all of the sound effects.
That sounds like a thing Ryan would do for sure.
What an absolute hero! So, thank
That's
you.
our captain.
That's why he's the captain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know Brian likes to think he runs the show, but he's not the captain, is he?
Nope.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned there is a clock. You can see it on the
Yes.
screen now, which is wonderful. So please, Travis, could you tell us what is your recommendation and why you've brought it to the show in 60 seconds or less?
All right. My recommendation is going to be a new VR game called Star Trek Infection. It is a you play as a Vulcan scientist named Ferric, and you're brought on board. They have captured a Cardassian smuggler who they think might be a war criminal, and you're sort of on there because you were in prison with this guy or being tortured by this guy at some point in your past, and you're trying to figure out if it's the same guy. And then about like 5 minutes in, you get put under for a medical thing, and the entire ship becomes zombies, basically. It's some sort of alien infection of some sort. And then the rest of the game is a fairly traditional sort of like skulking in the shadows, trying to get around some zombies here and there. It is a good horror stealth game. But the biggest thing is you're just wandering around a Defiant ship. And it's the first time you've been able to, in VR, just like exist on a starship. There are 3 full decks. You get to explore, you get to interact with other people. It's amazing because you feel like you're in the Star Trek universe more than any other game that I've played.
Okay. Well, I've got to turn off the alarm now. The ship exploded, but that's fine.
I had to like rush through the end there, but
yeah. No, but nice. Okay. So this is an interesting one where I've not played it.
Mhm.
I was thinking initially, I was like, had I even heard of it? And then I was like, oh, I do remember seeing some screen art, some like box art. I say box art, you know what I mean? Download art,
Yeah.
I guess, of like the kind of being somebody like being overtaken by like Venom by the looks of it, like
Yep.
from this kind of vibe. And then I don't think I ever looked into it. Like after that, I sort of saw it. It came
Well, like as
speeding past a window, and I was like, oh, okay, good.
Well, I feel like it's the same thing with like a lot of Star Trek right now is very kind of being pushed down the rabbit hole, right? Everything is kind of coming to an end. They delisted a couple older Star Trek games that were available on Steam. They just went out and just like, now you can't even buy them if you wanted to, type thing. And so I think a lot of the current era of Star Trek is just kind of being like, okay, we're gonna move, we're just blah 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 blah. So I think this is one that got cut. Plus, it's a VR game, which is already fairly niche, and VR as a platform is not fading, but it's sort of like this weird space where it got to where it felt like it was going to be the biggest it could be, and then now it's kind of recessed a little bit. So like you don't want to advertise for that. It's on the Quest 3 is what I have it on.
I was going to ask, what are you playing it on? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm playing on the Quest 3. You can also get it on Steam, so you can do a Steam VR if you want. So it's just like, it's never going to be something that sells millions of copies because it's just the platforms are so small.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got it because Star Trek fan, and also like I have a handful of games that I play a lot of on my Quest, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to try that. And then the first thing you do when you first start it up, the title screen, it like does the loading screen, and then it sets you in to choose like new game or options or whatever, and it's this overlay, and you're just standing on the bridge of the Defiant because it's a Defiant class ship is what you're on. And it's like, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, because it just like you could feel the space in a way that you don't when you're playing any other video game. I know that a lot of people have played Bridge Simulator or Bridge Crew Simulator, which was a VR game. That one is you're stuck in the
chair,
the bridge,
or the console that you're on. Yeah.
So this one, after you start the new game, again, you're brought on board. So like you get beamed on board, and then you meet the captain, and then they walk you through the halls to get to the brig where you're going to interview this guy. It's so immersive in a way that like only VR can do, but also every VR game you have 2 little that you controllers in each hand. The way you navigate the ship is a tricorder. The tricorder, you have to pull out your tricorder, and press a button, and it opens up your map. So you literally have to like reach to your left side, pull the trigger, pull up the tricorder, and then press a button, and like a map pops up on your screen, and it's in your hand, and you can move it around and everything. and you just see a deck. It's 3 full decks of a Defiant class ship, and you are just regularly just like crisscrossing around to get access to different areas and stuff. And it's like, after you've crisscrossed a few times, you're like, oh, I have to go down a deck to get to the cargo bay. Oh, I have to go up 2 decks to get to the bridge. And that's a thing that like just doesn't, and it's so immersive because it's VR. There's no HUD outside of that. So yeah, it feels like you're on a ship. It's great.
Do you think the fact that it's a Defiant class, so it's like it is a smaller ship?
Oh, that's on purpose.
It makes it that you can, because I feel like the immersion gets lost a little bit if it's getting a turbo lift. And you're now completely, you're just you could be on another ship for all you know, because it's so different from, if you're like on the Enterprise, like the D, you're just kind of, I'm on the bridge. It's like this.
We never go
now
with
I'm in a
someone
bar.
too engineered. Yeah. It's very much that. The Defiant is a small enough ship that allows you, when you first start the game, you're traveling through ladders and you aren't using turbo lifts at all. About a little under halfway through, you unlock transporters. So you can basically transport from one part of the ship to a different transporter room in a different part for fast travel. So you don't have to navigate all of it. But yeah, if it was as large as a Galaxy class or even a Constitution class, you would be getting lost in there because there's so much. Also, like, you go by some areas in this ship and it's like, oh, here are the crew quarters. And they don't have to make the crew quarters an entire deck, right? Like it can just be a handful of rooms that you can go explore and find little trinkets and
I was going to say, so you can go like, you're not kind of on rails. You can.
No, you can wander around as much as you want. The on rails portion is, each room has a security clearance. It's a different color. Right. And so like you have to scan the badge because you're not native to the ship, you're visiting. So you don't have security clearance to go everywhere. So it's like, okay, well, I found this character, I found this person who died. You scan their body and you get their clearance for blue. And now every blue door on the ship you can go into. And so forth. And then you just kind of keep adding colors to your access thing. But yeah, like you go into crew quarters, you can go into the mess hall. There's science labs. There's the cargo bay, the shuttle bay. And yeah, it's just, if you want to go back, you can go back and just wander around. It's not as populated as you necessarily would love. Again, there's a certain technology barrier still with VR. It's not nearly as like detailed and fleshed out as like a typical Unreal 5 game would be, because it has to run on hardware that's fully knowing 3D space. But there's still enough there that it still feels lived in. You'll find pads laying around. You can pick up the pad and then click through the pad and like read personal logs and stuff of people that are on the ship. And like, it's just really good storytelling in that way.
Speaking of storytelling, like how is the story then?
It's solid.
Have you clocked it? You finished the game?
Yes, I finished the game. I started again just out of curiosity. I got most of the trinkets and collectibles on my first way through. I'm one of those people who will like take the extra time to explore every nook and cranny, just because I am going to do that. Story's solid. Like I said, you get brought on board. They have captured a Cardassian smuggler who they think was in charge of a prison that you were housed at for a while.
But you are a Starfleet officer, though.
You are a Vulcan Starfleet officer named Ferric. Which, as soon as I did it, I was like, wait, Ferric in Star Trek, isn't that? And it's the same. It's Sean Ferric. I'm sure if Sean Ferric of Trek Culture ever played it, he would be super giddy because he would like literally just constantly referred to as Lieutenant Ferric. But yeah, so I will
ask Sean if he knows about this.
Okay, yeah, do so. If he doesn't, he would love it because it's super fun in that way. Yeah, so the story is good. Again, you get brought on board. Your first couple minutes is just getting walked to this guy. You interrogate him for a couple minutes, and then they clock some medical thing. You get some random flashbacks of you in the prison when you're in there with a different Vulcan, like a mentor type character. And yeah, there's enough mystery to keep you curious going forward. I don't want to give away too much of the later story. But yeah, it's very mystery focused in terms of the storytelling. It's atmospheric of the ship because you are learning about how the infection spread by finding a crew log of like, this is a main engineer talking about how power systems are going down and what they're doing to try and fix that. Or you find something that's like, oh, the main power has been rerouted to the holodeck for some reason. And so then you go to the holodeck and you find their EMH has set up in the holodeck to try and like keep working because that power system is isolated. And so she's still there. And so yeah, the story is like, it's not the most complicated story. It's it's a zombie infection, but there's enough story of like, how is this how are you connected to this story, because there's clearly some connection that you have
Mhm.
with it. How does it connect to the backstory of you in this prison being overseen? Is this Cardassian actually the guy that was overseeing the prison, or is it or is it not, because they don't know and you're trying to figure it out? So there's enough like questionable mystery things that keep you wanting to know what the next thing is, with some twists and turns. But overall, it's a pretty straightforward mystery, you're investigating adventure type thing.
Is
Yeah.
this the kind of game you like anyway? So, like, are you a sort of survival horror type player anyway?
I
And
am.
this is nice
Yeah.
because it's got a Star Trek skin, or is it, oh, it's Star
I
Trek, so I'll play it, even though it's not my vibe of a game.
That is my jam. One of my favorite IPs is Resident Evil.
Right? Okay.
That was so it fits very well. I think people who are not super into that genre would still enjoy it. People who are big Star Trek fans that are okay with the genre will still love it, because it just feels like you're a Starfleet officer trying to solve a mystery. There are the episodes of Star Trek that are like that, right? You have like Phantasms and those
Well,
the horror episodes of Star Trek.
yeah,
It feels like one of those.
I I was we were flying to Italy to visit family, and so I think the new episode of Strange New Worlds had come out like the day before, so I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I'll download it onto my iPad and I'll take it and I'll watch it on the plane. And I
Mhm.
was sat next to my son, and I had to like start turning the screen away because it was that like zombie episode of
Oh,
Strange
yeah.
New Worlds. It's like, I'll be fine to watch Star Trek with him just there. That's like no problem, like no issue
Nope.
at all. I was like, oh, they're like ripping this person apart. I'll just
So
so yeah. If you
so
were
there's
happy with that one, then you'll be fine with the game.
yeah, I mean, it's even less it's less of that. It's much more sort of classic-y Star Trek. It's, like, more creepy than it is
Yeah.
anything. Like, it's not zombie apocalypse zombies. They're very, like, they'll shamble around, and everything is dark because all the power systems are out. So you're trying to and also, you're a Vulcan, so the way you typically dispatch them, you have a phaser. It has kill and stun settings. The kill settings, you only have a limited number of shots. You have to recharge it if you wanna use it. But, like,
Right.
the stun lets you get away. They won't chase you throughout the ship. They literally sort of stay in their area. But the easiest way is you walk up and you Vulcan nerve pitch them. So if you get up behind them, you you reach to their you actually have to reach to their necks
Oh,
with
of
the
course, it's
controller and
VR.
stuff. And so it's great. So yeah, it's not super scary. It's creepy. It has like this very creepy, spooky vibe, but there are only a couple like jump scares in the whole thing. Um, so
How
typically, if you're like not a big horror person,
yeah.
you still if you like the horror episode or the scary episodes of Star Trek, it fits in that mold.
How smoothly does it run? So like,
I've
are
had
you,
no problems.
yeah. Am I
Uh,
gonna?
the,
I yeah. A few years ago, I had like an inner ear thing that made me dizzy, and then since
Mhm.
then, I'm fine. But like, I can't go on roller coasters anymore, and even playing first person games, depending on the game, I will
So it's
start
not like
getting nauseous and be like,
yeah, it
whoa, this
seems
is
like if you're okay with VR, you'll be okay with this.
yeah.
It's not like a bunch of like excuse me, it's not a bunch of like crazy VR stuff. Again, you're just a person walking around a ship most of the time.
Okay.
Um, but there are people who get like you mentioned Ryan and Tara on the show before. Tara, like she'll get super dizzy, I believe.
Yeah.
My wife Keely, she's like, I put it on and 5 minutes later I start getting nauseous. So it's like, if you can't do VR, probably won't be able to do this game. If you can do VR, you're probably fine.
Right.
Again, I'm on the Quest 3. It's run pretty smoothly. There was one hiccup very early in the game. You actually have to like climb on the outside of a space station to try and disconnect something. So you literally are like walking across the hull of a space station and you can see the rest of the space station next to you, and there's a big meteor shower that's coming in. And very cool, also fairly graphics intensive, and the Quest 3 was like
Yeah.
had some stutter moments there.
Okay.
But other than that, like once you're in the ship and everything, like I've not run into any sort of performance issues. I'm fine in VR. I love VR in general, so I've never had a problem with anything.
Okay, this is
So
you
yeah,
embracing technology again, isn't it? You
yeah,
love
very
VR.
much so.
That's fine.
So I loved VR since I was a kid. I was one of those kids that back when in the 90s when they had VR in malls, they had like VR arcades
mhm.
where you could like go stand in the giant like you have to stand inside of a whole ring thing. So I was one of those kids that like I went to the mall to play in arcades and would go do that. So like I've always loved VR just because like I love how immersive it is, and I'm a video game nut in general.
Yeah,
So
I see. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's. I have that feeling where, like, part of me is like, it's crazy that they decided we're going to make a Star Trek game and we'll do it here in
Yeah.
VR, and that'll be. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, it's like when you're explaining it, it does sound like a game that just lends itself to
Mhm.
VR. Like
Yeah.
it just, yeah, and also, oh, why not? The kind of person that will play a
Mhm.
VR game, there's a good chance they'll like Star Trek or they'll like the technology. If they're a tech-based kind of person, there's a good chance they like Star Trek and the idea of being able to walk around the ship. But I guess to have an excuse to walk around the ship, because I don't
Yeah.
want to just walk around the ship for the sake of walking around the ship. Like,
Yep.
oh, we've made a game where you can walk around the ship. I'm like, that's
Or even like
fine, but
there's the fantasy of like, oh, I want to be an officer in Starfleet, and it's like, well, that's great when you're thinking about the TV shows, but also if you made a game like that, it's like, oh, cool, I'm going to go work in engineering at a station for 8 hours. It's like
yes,
that's not a fun game. So how do we sort of balance those things where it's
that
still
would be.
entertaining?
I think that's what Star Trek Online should be. Is that you have to go through the
Just a,
academy, you qualify, and then it's as because it's online, you're all playing at the same time, and so you might just be like, okay, in that game, Star Trek Online, like within the first 10 minutes or whatever, you are now the captain
a
of the
captain.
ship.
Mhm.
And I think no, you should be, and because it's all online, you're the captain, and I'm like going, how did he get to be the captain? Why have I got? Yeah, why am I spending? Oh, am I a lower decker? Like this isn't.
Yeah.
But if I work
I
really hard at the game, eventually I will get promoted.
so that feels more like Eve Online, which is
Yeah,
the joke about Eve Online is that it spreadsheets the game because everything is so meticulous and ordered in that way. That pushes my line. It's like I just want escapism. So
yeah,
for me personally,
yeah. I
um,
don't know. It's
yeah,
just
I do feel like this might have been a game that was not designed as a Star Trek game.
they
It,
just put a
and
Star Trek skin on it to.
there's enough in there that like I don't think it's a matter of like there's some situations where it's like they have this complete game and they're like, let's attach an IP to it. So let's just
Mhm.
make it Star Trek. There's enough in here that it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they came up with the idea. They were like, we want to make a zombie game. We want to make a stealth horror game that has this elements. What would be a good place to do it? And we have this IP. Let's see if we can merge. That's
Yeah,
where it feels like it came together. It feels like it came together early enough that it doesn't just feel like a skin thrown on another
it's
game.
kind of like a rewrite of a script.
Yeah.
Like a Die Hard script, where they've gone
Yeah.
and found another one and said, let's make it Die Hard. They're like, we
Sure.
want to make this kind of game. Here we've got it. Okay, well, if we just make some adjustments here,
Yeah.
it would be a Star Trek game, and then you build it from. So yeah, from the ground up, it's built as a Star Trek game, but potentially the pitch was just
Yeah.
no.
They had an agenda for the game and then they were like, "Oh, this could be a good Star Trek thing." And like I think it works really well Star Trek because of how the ability of Star Trek to jump genres from episode to episode, particularly in the older ones, less so
Yeah.
in the new ones, but even some in the new ones do the same thing where it's like you have the fun episode, or the action episode, or the horror episode. So it allows you to do that. And so I think they have a little more leeway. And again, like it feels like you're in one of those creepy episodes of Star Trek, which is great because those are some of my favorites anyway.
How long to kind of, on average, is it to play through the game?
Depending on how thorough you are with everything, 8 to 12 hours, I think is typically what it's considered. So
yeah, it's already like a nice gap there.
Yeah.
8 to 12 hours. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And how much did it cost?
The game itself, I think, was $30.
Okay,
That's
pretty reasonable.
I think that's right. Yeah, $30 when I got it. It had just released, so I think it was also having a fresh release sale, so it was a couple bucks off. So I think I got it for maybe like 25 or something. But it's not like a $60, $70 game.
I was on the like the PlayStation store the other day because they were like, oh, last chance for the big sale, it's ending. And I was looking for it and I was like, oh, these games are on sale, and they still were so expensive.
Yeah.
I said, am I just out of touch with how much games cost now? I don't know, but
yeah, so I was telling Ryan and Tara about we were recording a supplement episode for Tempest recently, and I was telling them about the game because I'd mentioned that this was going to be a thing. And I was like, if you already have a Quest 3 or you have a VR headset that you use with Steam, it's like, and you're a Star Trek fan, I genuinely think it is an absolute must buy. It is the closest thing you can envision being in an episode of Star Trek. It's so great. If you don't already have that, it's a tougher like then you're not talking about like a $30, even if it was like a $70 game. I genuinely think it might be worth it if you already had those for a Star Trek fan. You're talking about buying like a Quest 3 for it. I don't know about that. Like that's hundreds of dollars for one game, unless you have other games that you're looking to buy as well. But yeah, anybody who happens to fall on that Venn diagram of Star Trek
Yeah.
fan who already owns a VR headset, like it's the closest you'll feel to ever being in a Star Trek episode,
Yeah.
unless you start doing a show like Tempest where you get to be in a Star Trek
Well, there
episode.
you go.
So.
Yeah, and that's even more of a commitment than buying a VR headset, probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the hours.
I'm thinking. See, we have a friend who some time ago lent us their VR headset, and we had it for a little while, and we gave it back. And now I'm like, oh, do I reach out and just say, hey, any chance you can lend it to me again, because I want to get this game? And I might. The only problem is I haven't spoken for quite a while. They've had a second baby, and they've had a second baby. He's got no time to be playing VR. Right,
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, now's the time to do it.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
hey.
I may lend my Quest 3 to the Sheelys so they can for Ryan, because I don't think Tara does VR, but
Yeah,
and she
she'll
doesn't do
appreciate
scary
that.
games. She doesn't
Oh,
like
wow.
scary,
This
anything
is
scary. So
absolutely not for her then. There's
No.
no element of this as well. I'm just. It's funny as well, like you were saying about the way you play it. I was watching on Trekking Up North. Captain Goodwill was playing Star Trek Resurgence. Is it Resurgence? I think it's Resurgence. Isn't it? And I played that game. Like I finished that game maybe twice, and I watched him play it. And he's stopping at like every console to admire the consoles, to read what's on there, what they've done. And I was like, oh, we play this game so differently. I'm just, who do I need to find? And then powering through. I'm like, why isn't there a run? Why am I so slow? I know who I need to speak. And then, like, I go in the room, and the first officer's a Bolian, so you need to find it. No, he's not the first. You're the first officer. Whoever it is, he's a Bolian. You need to find him. So I'm just like scanning the room. There's a Bolian over there. He's like going and speaking to every person on his way up to get to this guy. I was like, okay, this is interesting. These are two different takes, but
yeah, I think
maybe in VR it would be different.
If you played it, I think you could probably power through in like 4 to 6 hours, like maybe 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours. I think you'd be fine. Again, running through, it's pretty straightforward as soon as like there's a couple of moments where you have more than one objective, so it's kind of like which you decide to do at that time type of thing. But it is fairly linear in the sense of like, go here, do this thing. Oh, now I need to get into this area. I need this security clearance to get there. So let me go find the guy who has that. So it's fairly like, it gives you objectives, and as long as you're just going to do the next objective, it's fine. It's just if you get distracted in the other things, it takes longer. So
okay, I mean, I might get distracted, or I might be sick and get dizzy and sit down and then be like, I need a break.
Like you have a kid, so it might be tough. But if you borrowed it for a weekend, you could absolutely finish it in a weekend.
Just send my kids away.
You could do a couple hours on Saturday and a couple hours on Sunday, and you'd probably be able to get through the full story.
Okay. Well, I think I will. I will be reaching out to this friend of mine if I can borrow, unless anybody listening to this lives near me and has a
Quest 3.
Has a Quest 3. They want to just send my way. That'd be fine. Okay. No, yeah, because sometimes I do these episodes, and it's a book. And then the show ends, and I quickly jump on eBay and I find the book and I buy the book. And
this is a little tougher, yeah.
This is hard. This is a much more costly thing. If, as you said, if you were going to buy the whole kit. So I'm not going to do that. Sometimes the guest, I've got it. It's out of arm's reach. The guest sends you the book. So I received a book from previous guest Lord Yon the other day, which was his recommendation of what was it called? Fractured something. Oh, can't find it now. But so I've got another book to read through. Add it to the pile of shame of books I'm not reading. But I reckon I could probably play a game. But that's fine. Okay, this is interesting. I am intrigued.
There we go.
And if people are listening to this and they're intrigued as well, maybe we'll chip in and we'll buy a Trekommendation quest that we can all share and just
keep mailing it to different people over and over again.
It's my turn and we'll get the game. That's all you get is the quest in the game, and then you get to play it, and then you've got to send it on to the next person. Yes. What could go wrong in this global
I'm sure it'd be fine.
fandom? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I say thank you, and then a part of me is going, "Oh no, this is going to start causing troubles." But it does sound good. I've said it many times on the show that I just don't understand why we don't have the perfect Star Trek game anymore. Like why they can't make it. I just feel that with all the different games you could pull from now, even just if you just took Star Trek games and being like, this game did the best kind of ship combat, and this had the best investigations, and this had the best sort of I don't know, yeah, like doing research on topics or this or that, or even rolling in elements from Star Trek Adventures and the way that played. Like Baldur's Gate 3 was it? It was like a
Yeah.
massive game. People absolutely loved. Couldn't you just make a Star Trek
Reskin that.
Adventures version of that? Like there you go. That's
Yeah,
somebody
that would be fun.
run with that. There you go. But instead, we
Yeah.
just seem to get there's this.
Smaller version.
There's Star Trek
like Star
Resurgence.
Trek.
There's the Voyager Across the Unknown thing. It's just like
Yeah, they all have like Voyager Across the Unknown. I haven't played. Brian was playing that on our stream for a while. That one's like a much more management sim, which I think is interesting and good and fits Star Trek to some extent. And there's like story beats that you can change sort of how the Voyager story happens, which I think is good. This is definitely a much more like linear. It's an episode of Star Trek in a game. I think the hardest part about making an all-encompassing game for Star Trek, the perfect Star Trek game, is the fact that Star Trek is so many things, right? Like, how do you make something that can hit all of the buttons, because Star Trek does so many different things across its history?
I think you need to. Okay. My thought would be
Pitch me. Yeah.
So you need to be a character, like play as a character. So you have a specific role to do, and then I'm thinking kind of like a Mass Effect type style game where you play one character. Maybe you're the first officer. Actually, being the first officer would make the most sense, because then you go down and you lead the away missions. You bring your team with you again, and so your team, you'll have an engineer, you'll have maybe a doctor, maybe a science officer, whatever. So you'll be involved, but you'll be able to lean heavily on those people, so you can kind of do that, and then you'll have those conversation dialogue trees that will influence how things go, how much the crew like you, how can you persuade them to do things that maybe are slightly contrary to the way the captain suggested it, or are kind of bending the rules of what they should be allowed to do as a Starfleet, things like that. And then when you're on the ship, because you're the first officer, you don't actually control any of the consoles, and even the captain is kind of giving the command.
Orders.
So you're just sort of you're there, and you can be kind of saying, well, we should do this or we should do that, and then it will almost autoplay through those bits a bit, and you can be or maybe at times you have to take over a station. The tactical station's blown up, you got to go take over tactical or something. I don't know.
So making video games is super hard. Again, I'm a big video game nerd in general, so I love video games, and I love the sound of that. I actually think that the perfect Star Trek game, if you were going to do that, it almost feels like it has to be a multiplayer game, because like you're the first officer playing through that story, but the doctor and the engineer that you're taking down with you should be other people. They should be other players that are filling those roles. Like you said, like you mentioned like Star Trek Online, how it'd be cool if you were like just this person that was doing those jobs. And I feel like a perfect, but also I think about that and go like, okay, imagine if you tried to write Mass Effect with all of its different storylines and branching dialogue, but you had to account for a person who could do all of those things, but then multiple of those characters who all could have, like, that sounds like a nightmare writing wise, but I think that would be amazing.
Or I guess you have to have that thing where you can like control the different characters, and then you shift in and you do it. But I don't know. I just like the idea that I almost feel like with the making of the game, you can hide some things in you're giving you're issuing an order to a person to go and do something, so then they don't need to have programmed in a way that functions in the game, because they go off and do it. And so it kind of can hide. you can cut a few corners that way.
I don't
know. I just feel
I mean,
like
they're doing a new game for the universe for The Expanse. Do you know The Expanse?
Yes, I've seen people talking about that recently.
So, and like everybody who I've seen previews of it, they're like, yeah, it feels like Mass Effect, but in the Expanse universe. And I'm like, cool, please do Star Trek next. That'd be great.
That's all I want. And I guess you can pull back on the elements of like Mass Effect that are the more like psyop type stuff, and the combat is very combat heavy. And pulling back on that might allow you to open up other kind of avenues of things a little bit, so it balances.
But a framework.
Out. Yeah,
it definitely is. The Mass Effect is a solid framework to be like, this would be great to see as a Star Trek framework.
I also, just because I said it, now really do want them to do the Star Trek Adventures like version that you can play online, because I don't have people to play. I started playing it in lockdown. That was sort of a thing I organized to play with people.
That was
to
kind of how we came about too.
keep them occupied. The difference is when the world reopened, they all left me. So yeah, that's okay. Interesting. I didn't know we were going to end with a pitch meeting. I would have. I was just checking to see if Sean has replied to my message. He hasn't yet. I don't think he's seen it. So I will update you
Fair
on
enough.
whether or not
Deal.
whether or not we find out if he's ever played it. Does this Vulcan have an Irish accent? That's, I guess, the question.
He does not. He sounds like someone mimicking Spock, but doesn't sound exactly like Spock.
Yeah,
which
makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense.
They went safe. They went safe on it.
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't sound exactly like Spock, because obviously Spock is half human, and I feel like you can hear that little bit of human in his accent. We talked about accents earlier.
Tiny bit of emotion coming through.
Yeah. It's like really pressed down. Very good. Okay, let's just move into the final bit of the show then. We're going into incoming transmissions.
Incoming transmission.
So this part of the show, as I said, if people want to leave a review or send an email or anything like that, do that and I'll read them out. Sometimes, though, it's just a comment. So even if you want to comment on this, I will find that. So the last episode that went out was actually an unusual episode because it was a review of a previous Trekommendation. So early on, Leah Sci-Fi had brought on the audiobook, The Autobiography of Catherine Janeway, as her Trekommendation. I listened to the book, and then we later recorded a follow-up episode where we reviewed this book, because I don't know if you've heard it, but crazy.
Yeah, I've done the Janeway one, and I did the Picard one. I've not done the Cisco one.
Okay. Well,
I like them. I think they're fun.
They're fun, but there was something particularly in the Janeway one that I was like, whoa, no one's talking about this. This is crazy that no one's mentioning this. So anyway, we talked about it. On that episode, we've had a comment left by Littlebird E5M, who said, the book was a complete disappointment. Oh, by the way, maybe some spoilers now. The book was a complete disappointment. I was hoping for a more flushed out story, not a complete rewriting of Janeway's story. Jerry Taylor, the co-creator of the character, wrote Mosaic, and this book completely rewrites her story instead of adding more context. The daughter at the end was also stupid. So, and this is where the minor spoilers, I suppose, come in. But if you listened to that episode, there were major spoilers throughout. The daughter thing, like, do you remember this daughter thing? You know about
Yeah, vaguely. I mean, it was years ago. But yeah.
Oh, what's her name? Amelia Janeway.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Well,
the way she came about, like the fact that Janeway has a daughter in the future is not shocking.
Right.
The way we find out that she has a daughter and how her daughter came into life is kind of crazy, and the fact that I'd never heard anyone mention this.
For the reason I never care is in my brain, similarly to Lower Decks feels like a different universe in some respects. Those books is I always see them as so not. Yeah. I'm not I have difficulty with TV film stuff and the book universes. I don't see them as the same. So even expanded universe of Star Trek or Star Wars, all of the novels and stuff. In my head, those are not actually canon, even if they technically are. But when I read those books, I was like, this has nothing to do with actual Star Trek. This is basically fan fiction. Not to hopefully the writers of those don't take that as a diss. It is very much a fan fiction of this is just something that was fun and whatever. And I never took it as a. I'm never going to talk about the stuff that happened in one of those autobiographies as that's what actually happened to those characters.
Yeah,
in my head.
Well, I think especially with the Star Trek books. I started reading the New Frontier books because because I was reading about kind of the concept behind them, and it was that the writers were getting a bit frustrated when they were having to write TNG or DS9 books because you had to keep the status quo. So everything had to end. You couldn't have a character go off and get married, or a character die, or even lose an arm or a leg, because in the TV show they still had that. So it had to always end. It was like a mission that had no stakes. So they wanted to just go and write something completely new where they were like, well, we can do whatever we want with these characters because and I think that's a little bit why for a long time I didn't bother really with the Star Trek books. And now a lot of the recommendations I had for books are those that are set kind of post Nemesis, and they're
Oh, okay.
really good and they're really interesting, and the stories are fascinating. And it's more frustrating because it's all been kind of cancelled like that.
Yeah.
So like Picard and Beverly being married and having a kid, it's like, nope, that's
Nope.
not reality anymore. And I'm kind of with you on whatever they put on TV, I feel supersedes what's written.
Yeah.
And so, whether I prefer what's written is a bit irrelevant, because, it's the same way, like if you ask somebody who's Robin, they're going to say it's, oh, Dick Grayson is Robin. He's the only Robin
Right.
they've ever known, even though,
There's been multiple. Yeah.
yeah, and also he hasn't been Robin since like the 80s or something.
Yeah.
But because movies and TV shows and things continue to come out and always put him in
Yep, he's
people's
the one.
minds, he is the one. And you're like, well, that's sort of where we land on this, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh well. Travis.
Mhm.
What an episode. Interesting.
Ran a little long. Sorry about that.
I'm happy with it. This is good. We've mentioned it multiple times, but if people want to find you and what you're doing, where should they be heading? What should they be listening for?
So yeah, I guess I'll do the full pitch as well.
Do the full pitch.
So
Go for
yeah, so Starship Tempest is the show that I'm on. I have internally switched my mind. As I now describe it as a Star Trek show.
Mhm.
It is an actual play where we play a TTRPG, but we include a lot of elements that a typical, like if you go on YouTube and search actual play, it's generally a group of people sitting around a table just playing a Dungeons and Dragons type game. We do something similar, except we go through and do post editing. So we shorten things out. We cut out, like if someone debates a rule for 5 minutes, we cut that out and trim it down to be a much more listenable. Ryan, who I mentioned earlier, is our sound designer. He goes on and adds sound effects and soundscapes and music and all this stuff. So it feels much more like you're listening to a Star Trek show. So if anybody has enjoyed like the new audio dramas, the Star Trek Con stuff, it feels halfway between that and a traditional actual play, if you know what those are. So I've tried to start calling it a show because I feel like when I pitch somebody that's an actual play, you just picture people sitting around a table playing a game, and like it's definitely more produced than that. But you can find us by searching Starship Tempest. Just straight up Google will get you to some of us online. Any way you listen to music or podcasts, whether that's Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you just search Starship Tempest. We should pop up for you in there. We do have a YouTube channel, Starship Tempest. We've released the first season. We're now releasing season 5 on all of the podcast things. We have 1 season of the show up on YouTube. We're trying to do more, but we add a whole visual element to that, which our production pipeline is already super long. So if you go to YouTube, because you're just on YouTube a lot, watch the first season. If you dig it, then look us up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to catch up. So yeah, just search Starship Tempest. We'll pop up. We've been around long enough, and we have ingratiated ourselves with the Star Trek fandom enough that like we now pop up when you search for us. So
that must be nice.
Yep.
I look forward to the day.
You'll get there. I believe in it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I look at it as almost like collaborative storytelling with an element of chance because of the dice rolling. So
yeah,
and it's funny you should say that, because I saw a clip of a Star Trek Adventures actual play thing today. Saw it pop up.
Oh, okay.
And fine, but I was just like, oh, it's absolutely not what you guys do.
Thank you.
That is it's more like an audio drama. It's kind of like an audio drama with the director's commentary like over the top.
On.
Yeah, but they're both happening at the same time, which is but no, I mean, I've been I think I started listening from early on from season 1, and have been following it throughout. And I have my lovely gold Enterprise that I won from the very first giveaway you guys ever did, which I felt really bad about because it got stuck in customs and all of that kind of stuff.
That's the whole point for it, though. So,
but yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Travis. So everybody should be checking out that show, although Come on, you already are. I know you all are. um,
Well, thank you. And
yes.
thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. So
Well, thank you for coming on. I'm slowly ticking off the crew. You know, we'll get there eventually. We'll get there eventually.
I'll tell them they have to.
Yes.
We'll push them.
You just have to tell them you had a good time. Just be like, I
Yeah.
had a good time, and yeah,
It's a good time. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can lie as well. You can tell them it was the best time ever if you want. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
I'll tell them they'll get paid. How about that?
Yeah.
That'll be the lie.
Yes.
It's a paying gig.
It is a paying gig. Oh, I think all the guests know that, surely. It's just, the invoice takes quite a while to get sent in and sent back, and I've got to
exchange rate.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
And do we even use money anymore? Like, that's
Ooh, that's a good pitch. It's paying, but since it's in the Star Trek universe,
yes. You'll get a bar of gold pressed platinum at some point. When that becomes accepted currency, then I'll be sending it out.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Travis. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for all the comments you left, the reviews, the likes. Then you went and did all the same to the Tempest stuff. So I appreciate that. I, of course, will be back next week with another guest and another Trekommendation.
Ending program.